Okay, another way of gluing cardboard together is actually just glue the edges. And it seems a little difficult to do that with pieces of cardboard because it might not stand, but it's kind of hard to do with big pieces of cardboard. I like to actually use small pieces, and I just use my paintbrush and glue and I just tap. I'm not really painting it on, I'm kind of tapping it so that the glue is nice and thick on there. And then I can go ahead and stick that down like that. Now I can set that aside to dry, and I've already done a bunch of these little pieces that are kind of glued randomly. I did them earlier, so they're pretty dry now. And now I can go ahead and start to play with them and stack them up. And maybe, this one kind of leans on that one, so I put a little bit of glue there. And then I'm just going to leave this sit. I'm going to kind of let gravity hold it in place. So I'll move this over here out of the way and let that sit and dry. Maybe that gets glued on somehow here. And again, just put a little bit of glue and let it dry. So this is sort of like the set it and forget it technique for gluing. I can just put a little bit of glue on there, and then I'm going to set it and forget it, and then once that dries I can come back and I can keep building and keep building and keep adding to it. So I can do something called slotting. So let's go back to my circle that I cut earlier. There's a reason that I marked the center, and that's because I actually want to cut a slot. I'm actually going to join two circles together to create a sphere. It's very difficult to create a sphere out of a flat medium like cardboard or paper. But by slotting, I can actually put two circles together to kind of create a sphere. And I'm going to use this extra piece of cardboard that I have, because it's the same thickness as all my other cardboard. And I'm going to actually set it down right over top of my circle, right over top the center, and I'm going to outline the edge. That's the thickness of my cardboard. So the slot that I'm going to cut has to be as thick as my cardboard. Okay, I'm not going to cut all the way through. I'm actually going to go to the center. I'm going to cut that out. So I'm going to use my X-Acto knife, and I'm actually going to try to cut on the inside of my pencil lines because I want the slot to fit very snugly. And then I'm going to come across the very top. This is a little difficult, so if I need to I can actually turn it over and cut through the back. Okay, so I really just want to make sure that I've cut all the way through, and then that should just pop out. Okay, so I've got a slot going halfway through, and I can actually test it out on my cardboard to see how well it fits. So I can kind of slide it on, and that's really, really tight. Actually, I probably need to trim just a little bit off of the sides, just so that it's going to fit. I'd much rather have it too tight than not tight enough. Okay, so anyway, I've got my other circle here with a matching slot, and it goes halfway as well. So what I'm going to do is actually just turn them and stick them together. Sometimes I have to wiggle them. Yep, they're definitely snug. Slide that through. Okay, and that's really tight. So that's a nice slot. Very tight, very snug. And I can take it apart, put a little glue in there. If I wanted to actually make it more of a sphere, I could take this apart. I could actually do a half a circle on this side and a half a circle on this side. And I can actually build it up and kind of create sort of a globe effect with it. Okay, so that's how I can do a sphere or some kind of rounded form. But sometimes I want the thing to stand up and I want it to crisscross, and I've got weird shapes. So here I have a piece where I've already cut a slot, and I want to cut a slot into this one. And I want them to kind of stand perpendicular to one another. Okay, so what I can do is just take my piece of cardboard and I can figure out exactly where I want my slot. Okay, I actually want it to be perpendicular to the bottom, so that's why I like these cutting mats. I can actually put that down like that, and I can put my cardboard so it's actually fairly perpendicular to it, and then I can trace it on either side. Now the problem is that these are different heights, so how do I know how high to make it? Well, if I take this piece and set it down on top of my other piece, I can put a mark right up in there, and that's how high I know I need to make it. Actually, I need to cut this part out. Always remember, I want to cut out opposites. So I cut out the bottom part on here, I want to cut out the top part on there. And then I'm just going to do like I did before. Cut that out. Cut the top. Again, flip it over if I need to, just to make sure I went all the way through. And then I'm going to pull that out. I really want to make sure that I've cut all the way through, because if I just yank it, sometimes it's going to tear the edges, and I don't really want that to happen. Okay, so let's see what kind of slotting job I've done. And that slides together. Okay, and there's my slotted piece. If I really wanted to, I could actually bevel the top of this. I can cut the top of this piece at an angle. But anyway, I could just put a little bit of glue in there. So let me show you that. So what I can do on one or both of these, I can actually just take my paintbrush, put a little bit of glue down each side. Alright. And then I can also put a little bit of glue up there and over there, just a little bit. And then I can slide them together. Okay. And then once that glue dries, that's not going to come apart. Okay, so that's slotting. And then finally, something that's kind of related to slotting is something called piercing. And piercing is pretty simple. What I'm going to do is actually have one piece go through another like this. Okay, and this isn't glued, so I can pull this apart, and it's just going to go right through like that. So I'm going to take this piece and actually make it pierce my bigger piece here. Okay, so I can use any piece of cardboard, but let's go ahead and use this piece of cardboard. And you know, I can kind of decide, well, that's going to go up like that, and it's going to go through like right about there. So I'm going to kind of eyeball it, put a mark, and it's got to be bigger than this, but not as big as this. And so I just kind of trace either side. Okay, and again, it's got to be bigger than this. You know, maybe I want it to stop right about here, so I can actually put this down. If I want it to stop there, I can come down here, put a mark. So that's how big that opening needs to be. And so I'm going to go ahead and cut my slot. Okay, so it's still a slot. The slot just doesn't go all the way to the edge of the cardboard. Cut both of those. Come over to the back. Make sure everything's cut through. Sometimes I can take my knife and push it through. Just be careful that I don't stab myself. And if it's thick enough, it'll slide right through, but then it stops. And there I have a piece that stands up in all kind of different directions. And then just like I did with the slotted piece, I can put a little bit of glue it up, and it's not going to move.